Golden Black Live, this is not Seinfeld. That's another inside joke. We should not start shows with inside jokes. But welcome to Golden Black Live. And Kyle looks longingly over at Brian. Oh, longingly is the right word either. Not longingly. Desperately maybe is a better term. Welcome to the show, guys. You're here because you kind of have to be. And we're glad that you're here watching us. And if you are, in fact, doing that, unless you're doing vacuuming or something around the house and just have us on in the background. But it is Golden Black Live in Purdue and Minnesota tomorrow afternoon up in Minneapolis, and Stacy is making her way there. I think it's somewhere up I-65 probably at this point, maybe even a little bit further than that. Kyle, I'll start with you. The Boilermakers look like a football team, act like a football team. Is tomorrow a game where they have to show they're a football team?
Yeah, I think so. That was Stacy's story, I think, in the Express this week, is the idea of finishing, and you're going to have to finish one of these wins against a pretty good opponent, and Minnesota is a pretty good opponent. I don't think necessarily they are a great opponent. They're 5-1, but they beat Michigan. That's probably their marquee win, I think, here early on in the season. Michigan's not all that. So it's a winnable game. Purdue has scored a lot the last couple of weeks. They seem to have found something on offense, and if the defense can step up and at least stop David Cobb a little bit, then I feel like Purdue's going to be right in there.
Ryan, you've seen or studied Minnesota a little bit. This is not a team that is real flashy. They just try to run the ball down your throat and defend. And is that a fair assessment?
Yes. And by the way, if you are vacuuming at home, turn off the vacuum because you probably can't hear us.
That's true.
Anyway.
Sign language, though.
Anyway, the thing for me right now, and I actually changed my feeling midweek.
Flip-flopper.
And what I ordinarily do is I convince myself something is true and I stick to it for the long term. But I just think Minnesota has done this with smoke and mirrors to an extent. I think for a 5-1 football team in the Big Ten, I think they've been as unimpressive as you can get. You have to give them credit for winning the games, but you also have to look at how they've done it. I don't want to take anything away from what they've done, but I think there's been a certain right opponent at the right time sort of component to their success. Obviously their biggest win was they went to Ann Arbor and beat the hell out of Michigan.
Yeah.
But that was when the flames of the dumpster fire in Ann Arbor were kind of burning the highest right now. That they beat Northwestern last week after you had Northwestern coming off a really big win and took a kickoff return in the fourth quarter to win that game. Again, not taking away from what they've done. But, this is a team that doesn't seem to have a functional passing game, that has to be able to run the football and play good defense to win. And I think the way Purdue's playing offense right now, I think they're probably going to score. I don't think, I think as of now at least, the days of us wondering if Purdue's offense is going to show up at all are probably over. I think Purdue's proven itself to an extent offensively. I think this comes down to whether or not Purdue can stop the run, make Minnesota punt, and then if they're able to put Minnesota in 3rd and long. 3rd and long has been really unkind to Purdue for a long time, especially lately. If Purdue can just stop the run on 1st and 2nd down, I don't think Minnesota can throw the ball to win games.
Yeah. And Leitner's been mistake prone too. I mean, thrown 90 total passes on the year, and 5 of those have been interceptions. So Brian's right. If you put him into 3rd and 7 or more often on Saturday, then I think you've got an opportunity to turn him over.
And this has nothing to do with anything, but 2 years ago, Purdue goes up there, I think it's a 3-point favorite, and they discover
that was a terrible game.
And that was before Leitner. None of the same players are there. The coaching staffs aren't there. And yet they made Minnesota look like the Mad Bombers in terms of, I think it's Philip Nelson.
We thought he was Drew Brees in the first half. I mean, he was unbelievable.
And A.J. Barker.
If they had 1 week Heismans the way you have 1 week fantasy football now, Philip Nelson would have won the 1 week Heisman that week.
Well, they had 31-0 at the half, or whatever, 34-0 at the half, and it wasn't 34-7. That's right, because Purdue scored first in that game. Well, how this show works is we'd love to have those hard-hitting introductions just to keep you riveted to the show for the hour, and I think we've accomplished that. But our sponsors, which are directly behind Kyle's head, so you can kind of look to your right or left. Triple X, there you go, you're doing it perfectly. Route 60, Triple X, Route 66, on the hill but on the level, the Purdue tradition since 1929. John Basham and our friends at Basham Reynolds. Hilton Garden Inn when tomorrow is a big day. State HDI tonight, and State Farm agent Trent Johnson. I will attest to the fine work that Trent does, because I had to call him up this week for some personal business. But that's my problem, not the rest of yours.
And you
So
got off the phone?
I got off the phone, but I was not richer when I was done. But that wasn't Trent's fault. It just was a little flooding in the basement problem. All right, golden opportunity for Purdue tomorrow. We kind of hit on that from the outset. But what would a win mean for Daryl Hazel and company? Is it just another brick in the wall, another step up in the foundation, or is
Lundberg higher.
yeah? Yes, it is. There you go. You took that.
Well,
one.
4-4 going into the bye week sounds pretty good, I think, especially 2-2 in conference play, and you get to number 4, and suddenly number 6 looks a heck of a lot closer, and you can envision a couple of games there, especially those last 2 of the season, that you might have an opportunity to win. So I'm not going to sit here and predict that when they're still at 3, but I think it's a big game.
Yeah, it's probably when you look at the schedule going forward, it is that game where you can kind of go either way. If you win this game, all of a sudden you're on schedule to get to the postseason. If you don't win the game, it's still going to be pretty tough. It's obviously going to be tough either way, but I think if Purdue wins this game, it's in a pretty good spot to have a really good chance, or a good chance at least, to get to the postseason.
It's nice to be able to talk about this.
Yeah,
isn't it? I mean,
absolutely. It's no doubt.
I know they're
No
at
doubt.
3 and they're going to be the underdog in a lot of these games down the stretch, but there is a lot more excitement around this team right now than what there has been the last couple of years. I think that's pretty evident just when you walk out in the community a little bit, that people are more excited, and I think that's something that's at least a step in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think it is for all of us that are around the program and trying to cover it. You have obviously an opportunity to chat your questions. You can ask the most deep personal questions to Kyle or to Brian or to me if you really must, and we'll be happy to try to answer them. You look at this game, and we'll go on to the second topic, offense versus defense. Is this turning into, and I know coaches don't like to talk about this, and I'm not sure that last week that you saw it definitely this way, but is it truly becoming a case now that, Kyle, that Purdue's defense has to get better? Is it as simple as that if you're going to beat the what I would call the winnable games? And again, it's hard to say that tomorrow's a winnable game, or we're kind of making it sound like, I think some in the Purdue nation make it sound like a 12-point underdog that this is a game Purdue can win, and I happen to pick them to win. But is it as simple as the defense having to get the job done?
I think they have to stop the run better. I don't think you can win any football games ever. I don't know what the stat is, but if you give up more than 300 yards, your winning percentage has got to be about 1%, doesn't it? I mean, you just cannot give up 300 yards rushing. So I don't expect them to make drastic improvement in that area in 1 week, but they have to be better. They have to continue to put teams into those third downs and then actually stop them on those third downs. It's sort of crazy. You look at last week's numbers, and Michigan State's third down conversion rate doesn't jump out at you, but those early ones starting 4-4 really sort of set the tone and killed Purdue. So yeah, do better on those first couple of downs, stopping the run, and then get off the field. It sounds pretty easy. I think they should be better than what they have shown the last couple of weeks. I think closer to what they were those 2 weeks previous. Maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle there a little bit.
Michigan State's good too. I mean, you have to take that into consideration.
That's true, but they need to play better. Yes.
Yeah.
What you've seen the last couple weeks from Purdue, the last couple months from Purdue, maybe even, is that you've seen progress virtually all across the board. You just haven't seen it all at once. We just talked about if this game Saturday is a game or all these games moving forward are games where Purdue just has to get better on defense. We're looking at the offense as kind of a known commodity.
Yeah.
Well, it was just 3 weeks ago
Right.
that the defense played well enough to beat Iowa and then some, and they lost because of their offense. So if Purdue can get back to playing defense the way it was a couple weeks ago, and they have to do it with Sean Robinson, and at the risk of making him sound like the greatest linebacker ever, which is something I seem to be on the cusp of doing, because I think that is a huge loss for the defense, one that I'm not sure they can overcome. At least to get back to the level they were playing, 3 or 4 weeks ago. If they can just get the defense close to that level again, to go along with the offense you've seen the last 2 games, I think Purdue's going to be in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, and that will remain to be seen in terms of that. Let's move on to special teams. And again, Daryl Hazel said this week, and it's been interesting. We had a story in the Express about Purdue's punt coverage team. Special teams, obviously, Brian talked about the fact that Minnesota wins its game last week over Northwestern with a kickoff return, has made some big plays in special teams. Coaches always talk about that. It seems like Daryl Hazel, when this team needs to take that extra oomph to win a game, he talks about having need to score in special teams or make something happen in special teams. Again, punt coverage is one thing, but Mostert and Hunt are two guys that you would think are poised for another kickoff return for a touchdown. I know we haven't really seen anything really close this year.
Here's what I want to see. I want to see Mostert just straight up return the ball. I don't want to see the faking the handoff back there to Hunt or giving it to Hunt. I want to see, and I think he's going to get chances because I don't believe, and I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I don't think Minnesota's kicker has been real proficient in putting the ball back into the end zone for touchbacks. So I think Mostert's going to get some chances this weekend. But I just want to see him catch it and go, because that to me is where he's at his best, when he's not thinking too much about it, just getting it and going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I would say one thing about
He agrees.
You remember, and I know that the coaches tend to do things that they think work back the Indiana State game. Who could forget the Indiana State game last year? Of course, Hakeem Hunt goes all the way with he actually picked it up on the reverse, right? I believe, and took it for the touchdown. So yeah, it's interesting. The one thing I do like about that is now that you've gotten your answer, do you have anything else you want to say?
Not a thing.
Okay, is that the fact that they are trying some different things, and some different things are popping up at different times. I mean, even the Danny Anthrop, the Danny Anthrop option pass at a time, even though.
Is that what that was?
Well, what did you call it? You said he
Looked
acted
like he was throwing a grenade.
Yeah, but he said to Danny's credit, he said that he wasn't ever allowed to throw one in high school either with Coach O'Shea. But they do seem to be finding decent timing to do some of these kind of things. Of course, the Anthrop play didn't end up in it ended up in a pass interference, but it was mission accomplished. From a mixing things up standpoint, they seem to be pressing some of the right buttons.
I'm an expert in throwing grenades, by the way. That's how I know what that looks like.
Okay, good. Does anybody have any thoughts? I mean, in terms of, you probably have no idea what the question was.
I think Purdue's had pretty good game plans.
Yeah.
Yes, that's my point.
I also think if you're going to run tricks, it's a lot easier when everything else is working. When the offense was horrific last year, you heard a lot of people talking about becoming more creative on offense, running trick plays, running aggressive scoring plays. Well, that stuff works when the defense is expecting something it has to worry about, when the defense is back on its heels, when you can execute your base offense and take something off of that as something to be aggressive on. When nothing is working, people expect unexpected, desperate things. And I think now Purdue's to the point where it's executing its base offense well enough where if it works something like that in, you have a chance to to make a big play.
Yeah, they've had good game plans, I think, offensively. You look at the Michigan State game, and they obviously saw something on film that they felt like they could attack the Spartans in the flats. They got good blocking out there, which they hadn't gotten that great a blocking, I think, earlier in the season. But they went to that over and over again, and we saw them run that read option play and put the third part of it in, which we hadn't seen a whole lot of before, the little toss to either Anthrop or Sens or whoever's out there as the third part of that option. And it worked really well. Now, Michigan State adjusted, and Purdue either didn't adjust quickly enough or didn't execute well enough in that third period to stick with them. But, I like what Purdue has done at the start of games to try and take an early advantage.
What do you make of some of the rumblings, changes in the secondary? Obviously, Antoine Lewis coming out of the game early last week due to, I think everybody was having troubles and from a pass defense standpoint. But what do you make of some of the changes back there? And do you think you're really going to see some different personnel Saturday with Hunt and et cetera?
I think Lewis is still going to start probably. We saw Hunt in there with the first team really more on Tuesday than Wednesday, and it was back to Lewis, who's the veteran, on Wednesday. We've seen them do that a little bit before, where they brought a guy out. We saw it with D'Angelo Yancey on a Tuesday. early on in the season. Then he was back out there with the starters the next day. So, probably a little bit of an attention getter. I do think that they'll make a change at safety and put Taylor Richards back or out there with the first group, and Landon Feichter be the fifth DB that comes in their nickel and quarter packages. Probably for a couple of reasons. I think they feel like Taylor Richards is a better player in coverage. And I think that Feichter's a little bit nicked up too. So both those things will make the change there. It is interesting that they're making that switch against an opponent who runs a lot, because I think Feichter's pretty good at coming up in the hole and making tackles there, but it does look like they'll at least make that change this week.
Going back to the corner spot, here's why I'd start Antoine Lewis. This is a team that runs the ball 3 out of every 4 snaps. I think they run 72% of their snaps. Your best chance of getting beat on a big play by them is to make a mistake, to fall asleep in play action, something like that. Allow somebody behind you, something like that. Mm-hmm. So I would think just going with the experienced player, even if he's been struggling here these last couple games, would make more sense than turning to a guy who's barely played, if he's played at all in his career so far.
I guess my point, and I like this, and maybe this is the natural evolution of a coaching staff, and our second segment guest, Calvin Williams, can relate to, we'll have some interesting take not only as a player at Purdue, having gone through a couple different coaches, but the fact that you are sending messages to players, not necessarily, that you are now maybe closer to being in the position to say, you don't like what somebody's doing, you put somebody else out there. And it seems, I don't know if it's having an effect, but it seems to, at least to those of us that watch it closely, have some, that they mean business, and maybe for every position but the quarterback, it took longer to do that, but still.
It would have a bigger effect if they legitimately felt like they could make changes. I don't think they're to the point where they feel like that second unit, that guy, they can just put out there and have him start and have him hold up.
Yeah.
There might be a couple positions on the field like that, but there's a pretty big
You're not
big
going to be
drop
doing that at
off.
linebacker, for example.
No, there's a pretty, and really everywhere, there's a pretty big drop off in experience, certainly between Unit 1 and Unit 2 at Purdue. And, there probably is a lot of places, but for this team right now, there's a pretty big drop at nearly every spot, it seems like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you want to get in the business of being able to send messages to players, you have to have players. You have to have more than one player. So there are spots on this team where, for example, if Raheem Mostert fumbles, you can turn to Akeem Hunt. That's worked out pretty well. On the defensive line, if you're not getting a great play out of Rajon Howard, a great effort out of him, you can turn to Ryan Watson. But there are spots where you're just stuck. You can barely put 2 linebackers on the field right now, and because that's what they're down to. They've obviously lost 2 seniors, including their best, most important linebackers. So there are only certain spots you can do it. That's why I'd be a little nervous about the secondary. If you're going to pull out Antoine Lewis because he's struggled the last couple games, and you're not going to turn to Leroy Clark, who's at least played a little bit, I'd be really nervous about putting DeJuan Hunt out there against an opponent where if you fall asleep, if you're worried about more than just your assignment on that play, it can really cost you. And it might be Minnesota's only chance to make a really big play in the passing game.
They are at the limit on linebackers.
Yeah.
This is the baseline.
This is it. You cannot get another. If they get another injury at linebacker, they'll have to play 5 DBs.
That appears, and if you're a Purdue fan, you hope that's not the case. Okay, we're going to take a break. We'll shoo these guys off so they can regroup, find some more Seinfeld episodes that we can talk about in segment 3. But we will in segment 3 when they come back. We'll talk basketball media day. Brian was up in Chicago, and I had some recruiting as well. We will have Calvin Williams join us here in segment 2. We'll take a 2-minute break and be back on Gold and Black Live.